The iPhone 7 Plus has a great new feature called Portrait Mode. It's only available on the iPhone 7 Plus, and I am going to show you what it can do coming up. Hi, this is Jay from Mobile Pixel, helping you ignite your mobile creativity. And what I wanted to do today was kind of give you a brief review and an overview of Apple's new Portrait Mode, which you can only find in the iPhone 7 Plus. For those of you who haven't upgraded yet from your iPhone 6 or maybe even your iPhone 5 and you're looking for something that you want to upgrade to, if you're staying with Apple, you know, there's the choice between the iPhone 7 and the iPhone 7 Plus. The phones are essentially the same except for one major difference. The iPhone 7 Plus has two lenses, one that is more of a a kind of a telephoto lens and one that's more the typical wide-angle lens that's found on all the other phones. And the difference for this is Apple wanted to give more flexibility to pocket shooters in order to take photos without having to rely on electronically zooming. So with that, along with the second lens that does more telephoto looks, Apple has also introduced a what they call a portrait mode. Now, this is still actually in beta, so they're working on it, enhancing it, making it better. But I wanted to give you a look at what it's like and how it works in certain situations. So as you can see here, I got a picture of my dog Lucky, who kind of like jumped up on my lap, and I took a picture of him sitting there at the kitchen table. And as you can see, everything behind he's in focus, but also so is all the other stuff behind him. The cabinet there, the little box on the floor. You can see the windowsill. You can see something there above his head. That's all in focus, and that's essentially how the iPhones work, the mobile phones work. There's been this ongoing discussion of how can the phone makers, and we're talking about Samsung and Apple and all of the other ones, how can they convince people not to upgrade to a DSLR? If you've seen videos out there saying, can this phone beat a DSLR? Can it take the place of a DSLR? No. I'm sorry. At this point, even with as great as phones have as great as cameras have become on phones, they're not going to replace a DSLR. DSLR just has simply many more options. It's made to shoot in a variety of conditions. The iPhone, the Samsung, all of these, the Pixel, they are still relatively point-and-shoot cameras. That's what they are. Are they replacing point-and-shoot cameras? Yes. Why would you bother having a separate point-and-shoot camera, carrying that around with you, if you have a newer phone with the newer capabilities that phones have in terms of getting great photographic results? You don't need a pocket. You don't need a point-and-shoot camera anymore. Your phone is a point-and-shoot camera. But the makers of these cameras are trying to find ways to make it less desirable for somebody to want to go up to a DSLR. Now, if you're a pro shooter, you're going to shoot DSLR all the time, but you're still going to use your iPhone or your Samsung for a lot of different things. So, people may have both, but they are trying to enhance the capabilities of these phones to make it so that, hey, if I want to shoot some portraits of somebody, I want to be able to do what most DSLRs can do. They'll use a lens with a very low aperture, usually 1.8 or 2.8. Sometimes they can go down as low as 1.2. And what that does, of course, if you know, is it blurs the background. Is it keeps the person's face, the portrait of what you're doing, it keeps it nice and sharp. The background is kind of blurred out so it doesn't look as distracting. And so Apple has put that together in their camera. It's called Portrait Mode. Now, it is a software-based process in which they do this. It's not hardware, because the lens, the lens, I think it's the bigger lens, a 2.8 aperture, so it can do it, but you have to still get very close to the subject in order for that to happen. If you look at the picture that I have of Lucky here, I think I took the photo probably from about 2.5 feet away. It still uses the telephoto lens on the iPhone 7 Plus, so it is kind of zoomed in a little bit more. But even with that, if you see, when I took the picture before it applied the depth of field, everything else is in the picture is in focus. So it looks, just like a basic point and shoot photo. But now if we go, what happens is Apple, the iPhone, the software, then does its work, and what you wind up with is this. And now you have a photo that basically is just of my dog. The other stuff is back there, but like right over here where that little box is on the floor, it's not as distracting. This area up here is not as distracting. The windowsill is not as distracting. Really, you're just focused on the dog. And if you go in, the good thing is if you kind of zoom in here, let's zoom in and look at the edges. The software does a pretty good job of finding the edge. Sometimes it misses. You could see right here in his ear, it's a little blurry, but for the most part, he is a dog that has sharp edges. So it's very easy for the software to go ahead and pick that up and keep the blurred effect to the background and not really go over anything. There's no glow here or anything like that. And you'll see that with what I'm talking about in another subject here in a moment. So they did a very good job of isolating him here for this. Now you could use my dog, you can use a person obviously, but for this test I was just using him and just not even really thinking about it when I shot it, but then decided it would be a good video to do. So, as you can see, it looks really good, and this is without any editing. So, after that, I would probably take it into Snapseed and do some edits and kind of make it even look a little bit better. So, can you get professional grade, portraits on here? If you were somebody advertising and being paid money, I wouldn't probably do it. Sometimes it can be a little bit more challenging. Again, you have issues like, not so much issues, but, situations where, over here where his ear is kind of flopped down, it looks very blurry. The software had a little bit of trouble kind of determining where the edge was there. And so that's not something you're necessarily going to want to use for a paying customer. But if you're doing something for fun and you're out somewhere and you're traveling somewhere and you want to get a quick portrait of somebody and it's a nice, sunny afternoon or something, and you want to isolate them from the background, the iPhone does a good job of doing that. It's not perfect, and I will show you here. This I did just to kind of show you what it would look like. This is just a ketchup bottle, okay? And so I took the photo of the ketchup bottle using the regular format, and as you can see, the background, you see it's a little blown out. You can see the Hello Spring and the jars and everything there on the windowsill are a little blurry, but it's still in focus enough to see it and still in focus enough to be a little bit distracting. So we take it over to here. Now it's kind of blown out. But if we zoom in here, you'll see what I'm talking about, where sometimes the software can get a little confused. And you see this ghosting around the edge here, because what happens is you have the brightness of the edge of the ketchup bottle combined with the brightness of the background, and that's where it had a little trouble distinguishing between the edge of the bottle and the background. So, you can see that obviously the bottle is not warped like this along the edge, what you see here, but because of the brightness of the window behind it and the shape of the bottle, excuse me, it did have a little trouble kind of determining where that was. Now, if you go down here, if you look at the bottom, see where it stands out, where it's very contrasted between this and say the mat that it's on against, it very easily picks it up. And even over here on the side where the wall in the background, again, there's a big contrast between the colors, so it picked it up very easily. Here is where it had a little bit of a problem. Again, and I've seen this even with people. If you take a picture, if if the sun is hitting their head and there's a bright background behind it, the camera, the software has a little difficulty in determining where that separation is. And again, that's because it's software based. It's not the hardware that's doing it. If you're doing it on a DSLR, you won't have that issue because it's the hardware itself that's picking it up. And so the background is being blown out because of the aperture setting, not because of any software that is taking over. So, the question is, and I still don't think that, I'm pretty sure DSLRs are not going to be replaced anytime soon. But for those people who don't necessarily want to get a DSLR, the camera makers for these companies continue to just improve the image quality and the capabilities that they have. Now, if you're shooting wildlife or sports or something like that, for the most part, it's like if that's what you want to do, you've got to go to a DSLR. There's just no way you can get around that. But if you're just the kind of person that, you like to shoot photos, you're not necessarily one that plans on going somewhere and shooting photos, but you have your phone with you all the time and you see good opportunities, then the phones are great. And I really I think, again, it's in beta, so I think Apple's going to work on this. I think they're going to fix it because there's been a great positive response to it. So they're taking all that in, and I would expect probably with some iOS updates that they'll come up with some improvements for this to make it even better. But, so far, I think, it's darn good. I mean, if you look at this one here, again, if you're looking at somebody live, I mean, that's a big difference between the two. I'll kind of click back and forth so you can see just how much of a difference it is. And, again, the only problem that you see over here is the ear. See how it's nice and it's sharp there, and if we switch over, it kind of gets blurred. But that's a little thing. I mean, for the most part, you're just kind of looking at his face, and it looks pretty darn good. So I think they've done a terrific job. I'm hoping that the updates will be even better. And I suspect that you will probably see this technology if you're not an iPhone shooter, if you're an Android shooter. I assume at some point this will probably go in. I think they're going to continue to do this so that the cameras in these phones have become more than just an add-on. I think for a while that's the way the hardware makers thought. It was just an add-on, it's just there for people to snap a photo and that's it. But now you have people who are, using these. They're publishing books. They're using it to create revenue on their websites. They're using it for a variety of different purposes, not just for snapping photos. And I think the phone makers know this. They understand that, and they're working to improve it. And I think that's great for all consumers because it doesn't matter whether you use an Android or whether you use an iPhone. If the technology continues to improve, that's just better for everybody, except maybe for camera makers who are probably losing money on point-and-shoot cameras. But hey, then they can take the camera companies, Nikon, Canon, all of them, they can then continue to pour resources into their DSLRs and improving, those cameras instead of, using money to spend on point-and-shoots when Apple and Samsung and other makers are busy taking care of that portion of the business, of the hardware for people that are just going to be point-and-shoot shooters going forward. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can get some great quality images with an iPhone or a Samsung or any of the other ones. The mobile, the Google Pixel takes great photos as well. So the technology is there, and it's just going to continue to improve it, and it's great. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the improvements that they make with this. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, hey, if you like this video, if you appreciate what I'm doing, hey, please subscribe down below. Leave a comment. Let me know. If you got questions, I'll try to answer them. I don't know if this technology is coming to other phone makers. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. I'm not really caught up on the day-to-day process of that. But if there is, if you know of any information, please leave it in the comments below. Leave a link. I'd love to read it. Again, you have any comments, let me know. You can email me. You can go to the website, go to mobilepixel.photo, and you can kind of look at some more of the posts that I have there, and then you can check out some of the other tutorials I have here as well. And that'll do it for this edition of Mobile Pixel, helping you ignite your mobile creativity. See ya.